This April 25th meeting of the Albemarle County School Board is back in session. Mr. Page, do you have a motion?
Yes. I move that the board certify by recorded vote that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion authorizing the closed meeting was heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
No.
No.
Roll call. Oh, I'm sorry.
Dr.
Right?
Acuff?
Yes.
Ms. Paulson?
Yes.
Mr. Bianchi?
Aye.
Mr. Colzar?
Yes.
Mr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Alcarro?
Yes. Okay. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now if we can pause for a brief moment of silence. Mr. Oberg is not with us this evening. He's out of the country. If we could do a microphone check, Mr. Holden.
All right, Ross Holden, the school board attorney.
Kate Acuff, Jack Jewett District.
Katrina Colson, the Rio District.
Jason Buyaki, Ravenna District.
John Alcaro at large.
Steve Colazar, Scottsville District.
Graham Page, Samuel Miller District.
Rosalind Schmidt, Chief Operating Officer.
Matt Hawes, Superintendent.
Debbie Collins, Deputy Superintendent.
Bernard Hairston, assistant superintendent.
Claire Kaiser, Assistant Superintendent.
Okay, thank you. This is an auspicious evening tonight because this is the first time that the school board meetings will be shown on streaming video. So we should all wave to the camera in the back and look forward to having this be a big success. Our first order of business is the approval of the agenda.
Move we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. The next order of business is the approval of the consent agenda.
Move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. The next order of business is announcements. Dr. Haas?
We just had a couple of announcements. One announcement I wanted to make is that we will actually be piloting our anonymous reporting app the last month of school, beginning May 6th. And we'll be doing that with students, staff, and families at Western Albemarle High School. So for the last month of the year, we're going to test drive it, see how things go, and then based on what we learned during that month, we'll be able to better implement to a larger pilot group in the fall, or perhaps the whole school system, depending on how things go with that. Dr. Kaiser?
I did, thank you. Last Thursday, I was not at the meeting because I had the pleasure of going to the graduation for the African American Teaching Fellows. We have 3 of our first-year teachers who have made it now through with them coming through their first year, they are graduating from that Fellows program. That is a partnership that we have. It's a tremendous partnership. We've gotten great teachers from that organization, and it was really nice listening to our 3 teachers, Cameron from Brownsville, Nakia from Meriwether, and Kaylin from Jewett, talk about their first year teaching. They each had to put together a presentation, they shared videos and pictures from their year and their experiences, read stories, and then also talked about the influence and the impact of the African American Teaching Fellows group. And it was just amazing, and I think maybe my favorite part of the whole piece of it was at the end, they each were presented with a large picture of them from their first year teaching, and I think it's a great memento, and I was very proud to see them. I was equally as excited to see some of the folks that we've already hired for next year from that group as well. So it's a great partnership, and we look forward to continuing that.
Dr. Hairston?
Sure, we know that you're interested in keeping track of the number of staff who go through our culturally responsive teaching micro-credential process and the certification process. This will be the fourth year for the certification process. In the first 3 years, we've had a total of 17 folks to receive the certification through the assessment process that we have. This year, we have 27 teachers, administrators, coaches who have signed up to go through the assessment process. That means that you have to develop an essay, 10-page essay. You have to make a presentation through a 45-minute time period to a team of 5 to 7 folks who are using a rubric assessment to determine the individual growth of that candidate, as well growth of students based on the work that they've done. So that's going to take approximately 5 days or so, and if you're interested in observing that process, just reach out to me. We have at present 37 folks who have signed up for the micro-credentialing process, so we're making good progress with the work for those two programs that are designed to show evidence of teacher impact on student achievement.
Thank you. Dr. Haas?
So,
Any others?
no other announcements?
I have
Oh,
one.
wait, I'm sorry,
That's
Debbie.
okay.
Yeah.
I'd like for us to recognize Dr. Honeycutt's government class that's here with us tonight. They're here to listen and to learn about a school board meeting. So welcome, guys. Glad you're here.
We'll try to make it good.
Welcome, everybody. Yes.
I don't know if this is better now or at the later business, but I'll go now.
Please.
If I may. Jono and I attended the VSBA Hot Topics Conference on Monday here in Charlottesville, and the topic was on school security. And it, of course, talked about hardened security and cybersecurity. But one of the sessions that I liked very much was about counselors and the importance of prevention, and I'm very glad to see that we are moving in that right direction. The recommendations are from School Counselor Association is to have about 250, have a caseload of about 250 students per counselor. So overall, I think I'm confident we do better than the state average, but the state average is like 360. So I would love to have, at some point, just a rough back of the paper envelope calculation of how many counselors we have how many students we have per counselor. The other recommendation that they had is, and things that we've talked about before, is that a lot of counselors are not doing counseling. I mean, they're doing other tasks. They're doing guidance counseling, picking out courses and things like that. And the recommendation was that 80% of a counselor's time should be spent in counseling students and 20% the sort of necessary administrative and other help. But if I could get some, if my colleagues would also be interested, I would love to see those numbers. But those materials are online, and if anybody's interested looking at some of these reports, it was a very good conference.
Would anybody else like to see those figures as well?
Well, we have a budget staffing formula.
Right. I mean, yes.
So
Well, I can tell, I just happen to have my budget book with me. At the middle school, our number is 260, and at the high school, our number is 225 to 287. So there's a range.
Outstanding.
So that's how we're staffing.
Right.
We could give you more
No,
specifics
I mean,
exactly.
I just wanted to make sure we were far below the 370, 367 for the state average. So thank you.
Thank you.
that was a board initiative about 6 or 7 years ago to improve that ratio, maybe.
That's correct. It was it was before that because Sue Sheffield was still here.
Okay, so 10 years ago.
And having said that, I think we're still trying to think about how do we help increase or decrease those
Right.
numbers.
Thank you, Debbie.
I have one thing. Jono and I had the privilege of attending a community meeting yesterday. It was well-attended, much more well-attended than our town hall, so I hope we can get out to more things like that. We had a lot of questions from people. If I had to summarize it in one sentence, I would say my interpretation would be, it was very palpable from the parents, the stress that their children are feeling in high school to, I don't know, to fill their schedule, to accomplish something. I don't know. They just were worried about their children in that regards. But overall, it was positive feedback.
And I agree with that assessment, and mental health issues and counseling came up early and were repeated a couple of times during the session. So it was very propitious in the timing of that. Is there any other superintendent business?
Well, just in terms of business, I just wanted to just give some notes on things I've been doing this week. I hope you don't mind when I do this, but it coincides that every Friday morning I send out a weekly check-in. So since I write it on Thursday, I thought I'd just share some things from it. We did have our last teacher advisory meeting this week. And the way we've structured those this year is there have been 3 meetings each quarter, each season, in the fall, the winter, and spring. 3 meetings, 1 in each feeder pattern. So we get a different mix of teachers every time. And we're getting ready to put together and have all of them come to one final meeting in May, just to celebrate teacher advisory and thank them for coming to those meetings. And so we'll make sure that school board members get an invite to that, because that's a nice event. We did meet in Jasmine Azimi's classroom at Brownsville, and she had a quote on the shelf that her students picked out, and what the quote said was, "Mistakes are proof that you're trying." I really like that. I did begin this week, Monday morning, at the Center for Learning and Growth in Ivy Creek, and started out in the morning shooting baskets with a student and a therapeutic day treatment counselor. I had a great morning over there. Spent time with the kindergarten and first graders at Ivy Creek. They call their classroom the Castle, and they called what they were doing first thing in the morning, getting ready to learn. They were warming up, having breakfast, playing games and coloring. Hootie and the Blowfish was playing in the background, and I really had a nice time meeting those students. I did have a chance to talk with the principal, Mark Kindler. He's a very calm and gentle man that really does great work at Ivy Creek. At the Center for Learning and Growth, I was greeted by Chris Root. I had some time to talk with students that were reading novels that they had picked out, and in history class they were studying World War II and the Battle of Pearl Harbor and the mini submarines that the Japanese had developed. That was something that the students became very interested in, because there were supposedly 5 submarines that attacked at Pearl Harbor, but they've only found 4, so there's a mystery around that they're trying to get to the bottom of. Today, of course, we celebrated We Notice. We had 1,006 We Notice nominations this year for all kinds of employees, from students, parents, community members, and colleagues. And as I also heard Graham say out there when we were talking to everyone, we really love our employees and appreciate the work that they do. Yesterday, actually, just this morning, I stopped by Cale Elementary School to read to preschoolers. And as I came in the building, 3 students in a row hugged Ms. Jones, so I hugged her too. I figured there was a line, so I would get my hug. And I was with the pre-K, and we were reading If You Give a Pig a Pancake. And the students started shaking my hand. If one of them shakes your hand, then all the rest of them do. And as I was leaving the school, my hand was covered in glitter, so I had to make sure I didn't touch anything on my way out. If you heard a lot of cheering going on Wednesday afternoon, if you were out by Cale, there was a math competition going on that included students from all over the county whose schools participate, and it's called 24. And what the students do, if you've had small children anytime recently, they do a math competition where they get a card and they have to figure out how the 4 numbers on the card relate to 24. It could be either through a series of subtractions, multiplication, addition, division, and it's amazing to watch these students, how their mind processes. And so it was a tournament, and they kept going through until they had finals at the end, and it was really exciting to watch. It was really a lot like watching any other sports tournament or something like that. The students were just going crazy over the matches that were going on. We had our own fundraiser recently, all the employees of Albemarle County Schools. There are about 2,600 of us, and we chose the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank as our beneficiary through employees voting on it. And our goal is to just have $1 per employee, so it'd be about $2,600 for everybody to wear jeans to work last Friday. And we won't have all the final counts in until May 1st, but we've already collected, with several schools have not turned in their money yet. We're over $2,000. So it's an example of everyone working together to do the same thing with collective efficacy through collective action. And the last thing I'll say is that I did get an invitation for Saturday morning. If any of you are interested, there'll be a 5K run over at Monticello High School. And I noticed Katina Dudley here in the audience. I know you'll be running in it because it came from your students through the Health Medical Science Academy. They have a community health advisory team. And every year they have their 5K and they raise funds for awareness and for support. And let's see, what are they doing it for this year, Katina? Mental health awareness, that's right. Yeah. So if you're in the mood, it's 8:30 in the morning, Saturday morning, you can run or walk. I'll be bringing our family's hound dog, Louie, and I'll be jogging it. So I'm looking forward to it. So thank you for the time. Did anybody else have any business with the board? Thanks.
Okay, any other business from the school board? Okay. Our next order of business is the adoption of the 2019-20 school operating fund and special revenues funds budget. I'd like to get a motion and a second and then open it up for conversation. Dr. Acuff?
I move to adopt the FY 2019-20 school board budget of $1,095,000, $478,605 for the school fund, and $20,377,935 for the special revenue funds.
May I just ask you to clarify the number? I think it's 195 million.
Yes, sorry. I move to adopt the 2019-2020 school board budget of $195,478,605 for the school fund and $20,377,935 for special revenue funds. I think I got it right that time.
Thank you. I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any conversation? Since there's no conversation, all in favor? Say aye.
Should we do a roll call, please?
Sure, that would be great. Ms. Johnston?
Mr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Colzar?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Bianchi?
No.
Dr. Acuff?
Yes.
Mr. Alcaro?
Yes.
Motion passed.
The budget is approved. Our next, and I'd like to get a motion for this one as well, for passage of the fiscal year 20 capital budget amendments. Mr. Colzar?
Hold on 1 second. Okay. I move that we request the Board of Supervisors to amend the FY 20 capital budget to include the following: High School Center Number 2, $22.1 million, Learning Space Modernization, $1.2 million, Scottsville Addition and Improvements, $11.9 million, Crozet Addition Design, $1.2 million, Red Hill Additions and Improvements, $5.3 million.
We have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any conversation? Any discussion? Okay, with no discussion, may we have a roll call?
Dr. Acuff?
Yes.
Mr. Page?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Colzar?
Yes.
Mr. Bianchi?
No.
Mr. Alcaro?
Yes. Okay, this passage of the capital budget amendments. And our next order of business is the 2019-2020 strategic priorities development. And Dr. McLaughlin.
Good evening, board members. My name is Pat McLaughlin, the Chief of Strategic Planning for the School Division, and we're here tonight to discuss Horizon 2020, the ACPS strategic plan, to present and revise ideas for a set of strategic priorities that will take us through the end of our current strategic plan in June 2020, and to discuss the timeline for developing our next strategic plan. As you know, our strategic plan, Horizon 2020, is broken down into several key components. They include our vision, that all learners believe in their power to embrace learning, to excel, and to own their future. Our mission, that the core purpose of Albemarle County Public Schools is to establish a community of learners and learning through relationships, relevance, and rigor, one student at a time. It outlines our core values of excellence, young people, community, and respect. Our one student-centered goal, that all Albemarle County Public School students will graduate having actively mastered the lifelong learning skills they need to succeed as 21st century learners, workers, and citizens. And our 5 strategic objectives: to engage every student, to implement balanced assessments, to improve opportunity and achievement, to create and expand partnerships, and to optimize resources. These elements of the strategic plan identify the North Stars that continue to guide a 7-year period which began in 2013. We know that when we write a long-term plan such as this, we can't always anticipate the ways in which the world will change, so we need to build flexibility into our work. That flexibility manifests itself in Horizon 2020 through the adoption of biennial strategic priorities. Our priorities allow us to focus on what's important now in the school division and to implement targeted strategies that will move us forward as a system. Our current plan was developed in 2013 by a team led by Matt Haas and Melissa Anderson. As you can see here, we developed new strategic priorities in July 2015 and July 2017, and are now starting to work on our final set of strategic priorities as we approach the sunsetting of Horizon 2020. Our new strategic planning process is about to get underway, and approximately 1 year from tonight, we'll present the board with a new plan that will guide our work well into the future. But before we get there, we've got one final year, and we need to consider our priorities. So our current priorities are strong, and they've helped us drive a number of division initiatives, including a redesign of our high school experience, the development and adoption of an anti-racism policy, the implementation of an equity policy checklist, the opening of our first high school center, a safety and modernization plan for all of our schools, the elimination of class fees, and transportation to our high school academies, among other things. During a board professional development session earlier this year that was facilitated by Allison Linney, the board expressed a desire to have goals and priorities that fit the SMART format. When we developed our budget initiatives for the 1920 school year, we kept this in mind and submitted priorities that more closely aligned to the SMART format. Initiatives such as the launch of the JROTC and National Defense Cadet Corps program, the anonymous reporting app, the full-time counselors in our elementary schools, expansion of our foreign language in elementary schools program, and our first school program in the urban ring, all have included clear indicators of success, both in the short term and the long term. So our priorities have provided strong guidance to us for the past 2 years, but we've heard feedback that they're overly broad. In light of that, our recommendation for the 1920 school year is to keep our current priorities intact, but to workshop them and put them into SMART format. We've also heard feedback that you don't often get time to work together as a full board on topics such as this, so tonight's work session is designed to give you an opportunity to do both. So what is a SMART priority? Well, it's one that's specific. It clearly outlines what we want to accomplish and how we plan to do that. It's measurable. It has a clear indicator of what will show us that we've accomplished that priority. It's attainable. It's within our grasp to hit the target that we set in our measurement. It's relevant. It follows the WIN principle. What's important now for us in the division? And it answers the question, why is this important for us? And it's time-bound. It sets a clear expectation for when we will achieve this. And by putting our priorities into this format, we'll help both the board and all of our constituents have a clear understanding of what we hope to see happen, why it's important to us, and when we should see results. Our goal for tonight's work session is to take one of our strategic priorities and see if we can work together as a board to revise it so it fits the SMART format. So at this time, I'd like to invite the board members to come down to the table so we may more easily work together toward this objective.
Yeah, please do.
I am. That's right. Hopefully it's not Mission Impossible.
If there's space,
Which way do we need to go?
inches away.
You're stopped. Okay, are we good with mics, Jennifer? Great. All right, so let's start off tonight looking at a goal I set for myself. A while ago, I said I want to live a healthier lifestyle. And I decided to take that goal and decide whether it was a SMART goal that I had set for myself. So I started looking at the SMART criteria, and I said, is it specific? Well, sort of, but not really. You know, a healthier lifestyle could mean that I want to lose weight, or a healthier lifestyle could mean that I want to exercise more, or that I want to practice mindfulness more, or that I want to take part in activities that reduce my stress. So when I started thinking about whether or not that goal was specific, I gave it a no. I said, nope, not going to count that one as specific. So is it measurable? Well, I started thinking about that too, and I said, you know, I don't really know anything, I haven't really put anything in there that's going to give me a clear indicator that I've met this goal there. So for measurable, I gave that one an X too. Is it attainable? Do I have the ability to accomplish it? Well, there's no real indication about, you know, I suppose it is attainable, but without having a really clear measure that's built into that, it's hard to know whether it's going to be attainable or not. So I gave that one an X too. And then finally, is it relevant? Do I know why I want to do this? It doesn't really say much in there. It's probably, you know, it's an important goal, it's a noble goal, but no one really knows why I want to get healthier. So an X for relevance too. And then finally, time-bound. There's no indication of whether I want to do this for a week or a month or a year or a decade. So time-bound, got a big fat no too. So my first attempt at writing this goal really was a failure, but that's okay. We know failure's good, and we learn from our first tries.
If you're not failing, you're not
when we
trying.
do it, that's exactly right. If you're not failing, you're not trying. So this goal, as it's written, definitely is not SMART. Doesn't fit into our SMART goal format, and it sort of reminds me a little bit of some of the priorities that we have. They're noble causes, but we don't really get into the specifics of what they have. So I revised it, and here's the revision I came up with first. I said what I really wanted to do is drop a few pounds. So I changed it to I'm going to lose weight, and I started thinking about that a little bit more. So it did get a bit more specific. So I gave that kind of a soft yes there. While it's specific, it doesn't really talk about how I'm going to do that or anything to that effect. Is it measurable? You know, I suppose in theory it's measurable. If I weigh less at some point down the road than I do right now, then I've met that. But I still think that one was kind of weak, so I gave that one an X. I said that's really not it doesn't have a good concrete measurement for me. And is it attainable? You know, probably. I think most people have an ability to lose weight, and so I gave that one a soft check too, that it's probably something that most people can accomplish. And does it have relevance? There's nothing in here about why. What's the motivation for doing this? And I really think about when I get down to the R in the SMART goal format, that's where I think the rubber meets the road. It explains to people why this is really important to me as an individual, and with our priorities explains why they're important to you as a board. So I gave that an X for relevance, and then finally got to time bound. Didn't put any indicators up here around when I would plan on doing this. So another X on there. So we're getting a little bit better. I got a couple check marks there.
Although I would somewhat challenge specific, because I want to lose weight is not anything specific. It is losing weight as opposed to a healthier lifestyle. But do you want to lose 10 pounds?
That's right.
20 pounds?
Yeah, I agree. It got more specific maybe than healthier lifestyle,
Right.
but still not really where we
Not
want it
quite
to
there.
be. That's really my kind of PowerPoint prowess. I was trying to make like a half check mark, but couldn't quite figure out how to get that in there. So I said I need to revise it again because I don't have green checks all the way. So check this out. Here's the version 3. So by cutting carbs and exercising 30 minutes a day, 4 days a week, I'm going to lose 10 pounds by July 30th so that my overall health is improved and I have more stamina to play with my kids. So think about that for a little bit. Do you see anything up there that makes this goal specific?
Yes.
What is it?
Exactly the activities, 30 minutes a day, 4 days a week. You want to lose 10 pounds, and we can get to the time bound with the July 30th.
Yep, so we outlined, so what I heard you say was that we outlined kind of how we're going to do this, so that kind of gets into the specificity of it too. When is up there, so all of those things, let it there. Would you give this a green for specific?
Yes.
I'd give it a green too. Yep. How about measurable? What up there shows that it's measurable?
10 pounds by July 30th.
That's right, 10 pounds by July 30th, and also, am I keeping on track, right? Did I
4 days a week.
Did I do 4 days a week? Did I do 30 minutes a day? That's there. So measurable, we've probably got a green checkbox here. Attainable. You see anything up there that makes us think this is a realistic goal?
We'd have to assess your motivation.
That's right, you would have to assess my motivation.
We'd have to get you to a shrink here.
But I guess the question I would ask is it possible for someone, is it realistic for someone who's really focused to lose 10 pounds in a course of, what's that, about 3 months right now? Probably. So we can probably give a check for attainable. And then where's the relevance in this?
Play with your kids.
That's right. That's the motivator, right? So when I want to eat more carbs or skip the workout, that's what's going to keep me driving toward that goal. And so that relevance piece is really, again, one of the most important parts of this SMART goal development. So we've got a green checkbox there. And then finally, time bound. Did we set a target for when we're going to achieve it? July 30th. Right. So in relatively short order, we took a really broad goal of living a healthier lifestyle and formatted it to meet these SMART goals. And so this is, again, the focus of this is that I think the most important piece of this is the why, and that's something I want you to keep in the back of your mind as we start moving on. And so that gives you an idea of the work that we're going to be doing tonight. We've got important priorities, just as I had an important goal initially, but what we don't have is SMART priorities. And our goal tonight is to transform our priority on identifying and developing personal interests into a SMART priority. When we meet for our retreat in June, we're going to continue this work with our 2 other priorities to see if we can come out of that retreat with all of our priorities in the SMART format. So let's get to work. Okay. What you've probably seen at your seat right now is that you've got 3 items in there. The first is a SMART goal worksheet. It's got some check boxes on there. It's got our original priority that we have written for this, and that can just give you a place to write some notes, to guide your thinking, to see what you think about each of those elements of the SMART goal. The second piece is some guiding questions around each element of SMART goals that are in there, and if you can answer all of those questions, then generally you're going to have that element of the goal as being met within the SMART goal format. And finally, you've got a document with our 20 budget initiatives for the 1920 year that was just approved moments ago by the school board. And that's in there just to give you some reminders about what we've deemed important as a school system and as a school board as we go into the coming year. And to give you some reminders about what kind of measures we hope to see for each of those goals. So as we get into this, that might be helpful in talking a little bit about what specifically we want to accomplish. So you've got those 3 things in there. And when we when I work with people on SMART goals, sometimes I go out of order with them because I think it's really hard to get to measurable and attainable if you don't already know the specific and the relevance in the goal. And so what I'd like you to do is work first on making this goal more specific and more relevant. So your challenge is to work together to redraft the goal so that we would get yes in all 5 of the boxes. And specifically, right now, just getting yes into the specific and the relevant boxes. And while you do that, I'm going to step back and listen in. If you've got questions along the way, I'm here to help. So staff's all around the room too, and we can help coming in and answering questions. And to get started in just a second, I'm going to have you just turn and start talking with the folks sitting next to you around how would I take this priority to ensure that students identify and develop personal interests and make it meet the specific criteria and make it meet the relevant criteria. Once you've talked a little bit to kind of your elbow partner, then start talking a little bit more as a board. And we've got a whiteboard up here that when you're ready to put up your draft 2, find a recorder and bring that draft 2 up here, and then we'll take a look at it together and see if we hit the goals of specificity and relevance that are there. So just one more note around the goals. We've got this strategic plan again is going to come to a conclusion in June 2020. So time bound has already kind of been set for us on this. So I would encourage you to think about that date in terms of when we want to see these priorities. If you feel like you need to move it further out, then certainly that's the board's prerogative to do that. You'll see some of our budget initiatives certainly go beyond what we'd expect to see in 1 year. So any questions about your charge for the next little bit of time? All right, so I'm going to step back. I'm going to let you all work together. Mr. Colazar.
Just, one of the things that I like about the current priorities is a clear philosophical statement of position. And I worry that we'll get so much specificity and detail that the clear overarching message will get lost. And so maybe we need to keep the clear overarching statement and then have SMART goals underneath it.
Yeah, so that's the challenge of SMART goals sometimes, that you don't want to get so narrowly focused that you lose that overarching commitment that you have. And so that's the challenge for the board. How do you get the best of both worlds in this SMART goal format? So that's the challenge for tonight, and we'll give you some time right now to start working on the S and the R.
Great. Thank you.
So do you think it's specific?
And I don't even know what ensure means.
Well,
I mean,
it's kind of
you
time
can't
bound if they say
ensure
it's June 2020, but it doesn't say it in the
encourage it,
strategic
but,
priority.
I guess I
Okay,
would,
so we're moving to
I would love to
specific.
start with relevant. Why is this important?
Which one is specific?
Back to what students.
It's hard to talk about listening to the
Yeah, we just have to know.
We want students to be in charge, learning, excited about learning.
Okay, specific. What do we mean about this one? Just like they've all done an internship?
Their own
they've all done
relevant.
a
See,
project?
it's so vaguely worded that
I was
it makes it sound like
sort of
students don't even
sidebar,
have
but I
personal
was
interests.
struck
So
by
first,
that
do
when we
students
had
have
the
personal
reports
interests?
of
Can
how the
they write them
strategic
down in a piece of paper and then
priorities
they
played out at the
identify a
school.
little bit further? Oh, what do you like cars? What do you like about cars? And you go down
Under
the
the
pathway of
category of
exploration of
identifying
why a student might like
and
cars.
developing personal interests. Almost everything was outside the school, like after school
We know that.
activities
It's
or
pull out the
clubs
information.
or that
Why?
kind of stuff.
What
And
is
that's not what we're talking about.
So what way do you
We
want
want
to put out?
curriculum.
Right,
I
right,
think,
but I mean, in their reporting of it,
So in other
right.
words, we
So
were
my thought
clear.
was is,
Yeah, we didn't, they
this is
didn't know
something
what,
that
we weren't specific enough,
worked on
or,
this.
Right.
In my mind,
and they
I said,
didn't,
well,
all the metrics
if we
that
took all the kids next to school,
principals
we could say by
reported
September.
were robotic,
It's generate a list
this or
of
that,
interests
and
that they
not.
like.
Okay.
Then we have to do something.
So,
Then we have to discuss
one
with
of the-
students what that.
Well, want to do this because we
what
want
they like
school
about
climate,
those particular
that
areas.
there's sophomore high school to
Do
be
you think that's something that
something
you might
over
want to
what
explore
others
more?
consider.
And if
In
that's
terms of
something,
their
then that becomes
affinity,
curriculum,
enthusiasm.
like
Yeah.
it's a process for
This is,
moving them
okay,
into
this is important,
different,
it's relevant.
courses of study.
I think it's already relevant.
It is relevant.
Yes.
And that's where, that's as far as I've gone so far.
And measurable, I don't know.
No, I think what you're, I think
Right now, we're
some of what you're saying also
specific and
gets into
relevant.
the
Oh, we're not
relevant,
writing anything.
why
we're
it's
just- okay.
important.
So it's not
I
specific
mean,
enough, so we need to
hearing you talk
revise
about it, seemed to me like it's,
Because
that's why it's
When I
important.
was a kid, when I was 16, I went to
doesn't talk about specifically
when I was
what our
15, I went
academics.
I wanted to stay there for like 6 months until I realized you were gonna be looking at.
That went away, but one,
It's not- we need
but
to
as
revise
Matt
the
had
measurement.
mentioned at our last board meeting, when I took a course of study at a
Right
different
now, just to deal with
Okay.
specific.
county, because
Okay.
schools were done by townships, essentially, not by counties. Okay, so like imagine a magisterial district having their own independent school.
Well, it doesn't say why it's relevant.
But I
So
took
they-
a physiology and
So, I
anatomy
mean,
course. Did some studies, because I thought I still might
personal
want to do
interest in
stuff
it
like
in order
that.
to
And, well, like, change
have a
my mind.
greater affinity.
It was a good course, I learned a lot of things, but I explored, through my explorations, I realized I didn't want to follow that as a future course.
Okay, so if we could brainstorm things that we would like to see in terms of
Academics will
making it more specific, let's, like, everyone take,
Like a smart
like, what is the specific thing? Take a course, take like an ASVAB thing where you identify things, what do we, internship, a project-based course? What do we want to see for
In the classroom.
figure out our
What
answers?
I want to see,
classroom activity.
I want
Ensures
opportunity
the
for
students
students to explore their
I would say encourage.
interest.
Okay.
We don't want, and it's more than encouraging the students to do
And
it on
a
their
course
own,
of
it's
curriculum
providing the resources,
that
yeah.
supports that exploration, where they have the opportunity to explore, dig deeply into it, and that could be self-study, interviewing people that are in that particular field.
That's interesting.
Internships. And it could be
Be satisfied in the
because it's,
curriculum, I mean, ensure
because
that
it's
the
a
students
person
identify and develop.
we're really getting to the heart of the matter, which is the student educational priority.
Okay.
It's not the, here, everybody takes math, everybody takes science.
I mean, I don't want to preach,
So it
looking
can
at
become
what they do
very,
outside of
it
school,
could
because
become
that can
very,
reinforce
so
what
a lot of times,
reinforces what we're doing in the classroom.
a mile wide and an inch deep. In this case, it could be an inch wide
In
and
the
a mile
academic
deep.
program?
This
sort of-
creates that opportunity.
So, when I'm hearing you, I wrote opportunity to explore their interest. Spell there,
Spell there.
curriculum that supports that exploration, whether it's self-study. I liked your idea of interviewing a professional, that's neat. So what I'm thinking is something that's achievable by 2020. What about freshman seminar, which we're
But
funded?
the other academic
I don't
opportunities.
really know what we're doing in that curriculum, but that could be something where like the
So-
output of this freshman seminar needs to be that every student has interviewed two professionals
Or they have an action plan to.
or has an action
To
plan
be
for the
able
high
to
school.
achieve that
No
strategic
help at all.
priority, right?
Okay. Or an action plan to achieve.
That would help.
Freshman seminar, so that's Benjamin. Freshman seminar.
Projects, that would be
Areas of
like,
interest.
especially maybe.
Interviewed, I'd like your interview
And-
There could be
professional.
projects all over
That'd
the
be,
place.
that's doable.
Yeah,
12th grade
yeah,
project,
easy.
it's a camp project.
Students exiting
Exit
That would be one of the
activities,
key
academic activities.
seminar, identify personal
like
interest.
culminating the whole thing, but it was still
Personal
the other
interest.
stuff leading up to it.
School division will foster relevant. How was it relevant?
The
Academic activities.
To be a life.
And support.
Either develop
People stop talking.
to develop occupational skills.
It's like absolute silence.
Or to create a
I will say
lifelong
that is a
learner.
ensure the, how about ensure
Collaborative workspace.
the academic
That is, yeah.
I mean, it's hard.
resources.
I guess I could do it. I mean, we are did it. I've got like the first sentence.
Yeah, this is great.
Promote
Actually, I
students'
said,
development.
Teamwork's here.
although I did really bad shorthand here, so let's see.
okay.
And exiting freshman
Doesn't
seminar,
have soaring rhetoric
students
behind it.
will have
Upon exiting,
Okay.
say enough about
Students
I mean,
will
we're-
have identified a personal
Why don't,
interest. Do we want to provide examples? Do we want to get that
Ensure the
specific? That's something I guess we can bring up with other, like,
What we're
ideas,
doing
like
is we're trying to put
having
the fuel
interviewed a
there so they can
professional,
do it.
or maybe it's
So
just, no,
ensure
maybe
the
it's just coming up
academic
with like some.
environment
I think
is
it's
accurate.
just the action point.
once they leave school.
And then
Academic resources,
we
okay,
at the school division works to make
tackle the world, you know,
is
to have
such to
some type of
promote
occupation.
students.
to provide relevant education that allows
Way
them
of being
to
able to deal with it.
explore
The
their
development of
life-
students'
those
personal
self-interest, those interests.
Students have identified
I
personal
don't want to use
interests.
the word relevant, but
So identify the personal interests and, it is incredibly hard. I literally was thinking of something that I heard.
So, some type of
Exiting
occupation
freshman
would have
semester,
to
so
be
identified personal interests and figured out some, figured out a relevant path. I figured out a path to pursue that.
Whatever,
Figured out a-
develop personal
curriculum strategies.
think that when they
Figured out a
spend
strategy and develop,
personal interest would have to be a part of, would be included in it.
Well,
develop
I
a
mean,
strategy
is that all
to
we're
pursue
trying
that
to do?
interest.
We're trying to
We can wordsmith that.
engage their personal, engage them. in
Why is this relevant? Why do we want
Right,
them to be
I know.
exiting freshman seminar
Trying
with?
to promote their personal interest in robotics because, and they do history classes and.
Because it
Or we
it
trying
allows
to
them to
Engage,
more
do you like
deeply
the word
explore interests that are relevant to them.
If you look at that.
So I don't think we can ensure. I
Let's
think-
say the academic environment.
I'm just gonna try to get it on the
Ties
first
into-
go around this
it ties
time.
into
Promote
personal
the
learning
identification and
that
development
we,
of
that
students.
we strongly
Yeah,
believe
and
in.
I
That
have to have identification.
creates
Okay, okay,
Development stage.
which, yeah.
Which, okay,
Student development is how they identify, right?
doesn't
Just
say.
saying. Yeah, yeah.
Right, so I was thinking
it
has
creates
to
more
be-
meaningful learning. I mean, you
But these questions
work
So, which is
harder.
relevant, it's meaningful learning, it's
related
more
to the
buzzy.
system instead of to the kid.
So are
Okay.
we supposed to write the whole thing?
Yeah, but I was
So,
thinking
we don't
that
have it
Thing
perfect
that
here.
says
We do, I like the
that.
first
I
sentence.
think,
that
Upon
would be
exiting
related to the
freshman
occupation,
seminar,
it has to
students
be
will have
together.
identified personal interests and develop
Like
a
a way
strategy to
of
pursue
first
that interest.
being able to
Students will be.
Because it is important that students deeply, we want them to deeply
giving them something
explore
to
interests that are
consider,
relevant to
something
them.
that could
That's all I
bring
have
money
for
into
last.
their house. I'm thinking there's like
Pretty close.
so some type of
I mean,
But
you know,
also-
we don't have the time to like sit and
other things
and
like
make
how
the
we
wording.
because
I mean, they get
just
the
yeah.
idea. I feel like
But again,
relevance is
that wouldn't
the
be-
easiest piece. I mean, we all know why this is relevant. I think we're all on board with why it's important for us.
in college.
I think the specificity is going to be where it gets a little more
I mean,
difficult.
if they're
Even the
engaged,
trades,
be
you know,
more
like,
engaged.
More specific. Is it measurable?
Perform better.
Specific, so
and
measurable. I
carry
like
these
that. I think we're
skills
getting
as life.
measurable. If we're saying like,
So then the freshman
if we're
seminar.
making sure that every student is doing freshman seminar, like this is the output that we. And I see there could be some perspectives. I mean, your interests change, especially when you're in high school. But I guess it's still important for us that they, at the very least, they need to be doing the thinking and having a
Yeah,
plan.
but you know what?
What exactly do you want to accomplish?
Yes.
Student says,
Yeah, some of the
fifth grade, hey, I had the summer experience, I'm no longer interested in that, I'm going to do something else. Okay, then we work with you and say,
But if
okay.
this is a relevant goal,
So what did you
I would
learn?
take that.
What happened?
development questions would have
Tell us
to be
why you're interested in something else.
related
When we
to
start
students
tailoring,
instead of
this goes back to, you know, our conversation the other day. It's like,
Through the development.
right, school division is great. Curriculum and a relevant learning pathway for students.
Engaged in their
Division has to create
Why is it significant?
relevant learning pathways for students to
Well, I guess-
explore their personal interests.
I guess we're talking about.
You gotta write some of
school
this down
division.
too. I'm not relevant learning pathways. See, that's as far as I got. I'm
For students
horrible.
to explore their personal interests.
Promote.
So once you've got some ideas that are starting to generate, next step is to start sharing them out with each other and seeing if you see similarities there, areas of continuity that can help you make your first draft of the specific relevant goal, priorities.
Oh, they had questions that we could have asked to help guide ourselves. Who was involved? Who were the stakeholders? Okay, we're talking as a group now? I was eavesdropping.
I think this is going to be the most challenging one.
Okay.
Because the division has to follow through
I
on
know that we
their
should have
part.
we should know.
Part.
Okay, I'll pull off the Band-Aid here.
Yeah, they were.
Rip it off. Fast. No, slow.
We were soaking in water and then it just flows off.
We're on the roll. I could.
So we put upon exiting, so for us,
Is this the
specific.
specific?
Yes, in order to get to some of the specific, we were thinking around freshman seminar, which is somewhere we've already put money and effort, and it seems like a place where students could certainly work on identifying and developing their personal interests. So to try to get specific, we said upon exiting freshman seminar, students should have identified a personal interest and developed a strategy to pursue that interest. We had some more nitty-gritty ideas around that. Jason had a really good one, which is like interviewing a professional.
Our mentorship.
Which would be a great addition to freshman seminar.
So like at the
Course of
end of
study.
Freshman seminar,
Right.
even the centers,
Project-based learning.
centers too, because that's the centers.
They don't do freshman.
Hold on. Let us get our ideas out there. Let
that's-
everybody get our ideas out, and then
We were thinking
then we
past freshman year.
Don't be shooting us
Freshman
down,
year could
Steve.
start it,
Come on.
and then the centers would
Yeah, that's,
continue.
yeah, that's good critique. That was, but for us, that's where we focused in the beginning, was just a specific goal is at the end of freshman seminar, especially since we're looking at 2020 being the goal year. That seems like something that we could accomplish. Like they should be coming out with action plan.
The other day, I was at the 10th grade English at Western, and one of the subjects was freshman seminar. And one of the things that the students were saying is that what kids really want is to have projects, because it's a little bit too much videos and it's a little bit too much other stuff. And they would like hands-on projects. What a great hands-on project for each student to be working on what their interests are.
Interview a professional, that I think it's great.
Right? Oh, I think, yeah, I like that a lot. And so, and then maybe to go in a consultation, have some consultation with their teacher, because this is a teacher who's going to stay with them through all 4 years of high school. And that it's all subject to change. If you want to be a doctor and you later say, you know what, I'd rather be a veterinarian, or I'd rather be a welder, it's all subject to change, but at least they're going through the exercise.
That's the one thing we want to be able to do is to be,
So our
make it relevant.
Yep. So additional things, interviewing a professional, mentorship and internship, which probably wouldn't be in freshman seminar. One thing I could throw out there is taking the ASVAB, which is a interest predictor test. I didn't say that, but the military does it. I did it in, I think, 10th grade. It was actually really interesting because it helps tell you where your,
What was that, Katrina?
the ASVAB, it tells you where your interests are aligned.
Oh, yeah.
It's like an interest test.
Yep,
I mean, these are
yep,
just things that we could say like every freshman should be doing. You don't have to agree or not. Our trips to our academies, for our centers, so that you know what's being offered.
Right. I was thinking job shadowing and internships too.
And then our second sentence, which we didn't put a lot of, I didn't write down, even though Jason was throwing out some great terms. Relevant.
Can't read it.
Deeply explore interests that are relevant to them. Ties to project-based learning, rigor and relevance. Relevant learning pathways for students to explore personal interests.
So the key was that the school division itself has to create relevant pathways for students to pursue their personal interests. So if a student has, so if a student says, I've got this great interest in cars, right? That's all they like. Well, okay, what do you like about cars? Well, gosh, there's math, there's engineering, there's history of cars, there's taking care of a car, car
losing money
repair.
with
But there's
test
a lot of components that go into it that you can explore, and maybe a student doesn't know which one of those pathways they may pop out, but they want to do something with cars, and so we as a division have to provide that
So,
relevance.
for instance, when that student is taking American history, he should be able to do projects based on how the automobile has changed American culture, you know, or whatever. To
Yes.
pursue
Yes.
What methods of transportation over time in American history.
And so there's a lot of flexibility that needs to be built in for the individual students to that point.
See, why don't you read it?
Oh, well, I rewrote what we wrote, so, but, I mean, we're still staying on this plane
Right,
and
not
the
getting-
concrete items being measurement. But like Katrina and Jason were focusing, I don't know if you all recall when the principals reported out on the strategic priorities, every single one of the pursuing student interests was like after-school activities. I mean, there's like robotics club or this or that. It wasn't in the academic environment what we could help facilitate. So this is generally, we agree on the concept, not the language perhaps, promote greater student engagement in their academic growth through promoting the identification and development of their personal interests. I mean, which is perhaps not specific enough.
The big change from that is to put the academics.
Right, to make
Because
it,
they're not academics the way the word priority is.
yeah, the original language is,
I think I think that adds a good relevance component to it. Maybe not much in the way of the specificity, but I like it's already better by just grounding it in why is this important.
in the classroom, essentially.
And then you're getting the hows. I mean, because we went down the how path and just made some minor changes, saying ensure that students identify, develop, and pursue their personal interests. But we also had another one that said to pursue a pathway, for going on after school. But I think this is supposed to be about in school. What's happening in school.
It's
that
in service
help them
of
for
promoting
their
lifelong
future.
learning.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Personal
Eventually.
interest could be after school. Lifelong learning would be where the personal interest could come.
But again, it goes back to my question. I see us with a priority that's somewhat general, but for the whole school division. But in terms of a SMART goal, we could
Right.
say what your SMART goal was
And I think
coming out of
that's,
freshman
yeah.
seminar.
Right.
I think that's the pathway we were going down.
Yeah.
And freshman seminar is kind of an embodiment of this goal anyway. I mean, that's kind of where it arose out of. So, I mean, we can give ourselves some credit for having already accomplished this kind of
Right.
vague, so
But we
like
still have to
incorporated.
do this for third graders too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
And that's
so-
that's the thing, is we
Right.
tend, when we think
That's a
of
good
that
point.
pursuing the points, we tend to lead to high school.
Right.
But it's.
We lose them by then.
Yeah, and
It's
we,
equally relevant in third grade, what kind of books are you giving kids to read? Is it something that's turning them off, or is it something that's making them want to read because they're interested?
right, and we didn't focus on 2020 necessarily like you did, but yours made some sense if you think about 2020 as the cutoff date, as the deadline.
Yeah.
We thought about past that.
But I don't just want to go for like the low-hanging fruit. I mean, that's a valid critique that it's focused on one.
Freshman.
It's focused on one area, and you want to go
kindergarten.
to. Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring it inside the control of the academic environment.
In the academic environment, and I think if we are going to put, if we're going to have a SMART goal for high school, we ought to have a SMART goal for middle.
And that makes sense because, I mean, there can be one overall statement, priority, but then the
There could be bullet
implementation.
Measurements.
And measurement
And
is
the measure, I
different.
think one of the best measurements that we have is our students' survey data.
Yeah.
Let's say that again.
Getting into the M's.
I know.
All these-
So when you think you're getting
done.
close, you're done. So when
No,
you're done.
no, did you all read yours?
They've read some of
Okay.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
which-
did.
So when you're done and you've got one that you think has kind of coalesced around all the thinking, get a recorder and write it up here.
But
Okay, let's go through
Doesn't
there.
mean you need to write the second,
Right.
but just when you're ready.
We're still hung up, at least I'm still hung up on the difference between priorities and SMART goals. Because again, priorities are a statement of philosophy. SMART goals is how you're going to get there.
I think the way you had worded the priority with the relevance at the beginning is useful, and that can be kind of like the bold print. And then I think it's okay for me to have bullet points under that kind of give us some more things to
Read what yours was again.
in terms of getting to the specific part, we put upon exiting freshman seminar, students have identified personal interest and developed a strategy to pursue that interest. But that's high school only.
I think it's high school only, and I think that feels like one measurement.
Yeah, that's too,
maybe
that might be too narrow.
Yeah.
Debbie just made a good suggestion, as usual, that, maybe what you see is when we start thinking about a new strategic plan too, that your priorities last a little bit longer, but every year your SMART portions of them shift a little bit. So you might be able to say, hey, right now freshman seminar is something that's really important to us. It's a trial year for it. We want to see how it goes, if it's really hitting these goals that we have there. So we want to specifically take a look at that. Maybe there's 2 or 3 things that you want to specifically take a look at while still saying we still have this overarching goal that's there. And these couple of things might give us some real clear indicators of are we moving in the right direction.
Well, I think what Steve and our goal was, the principals reported out just after school and other kinds of activities, and we really wanted to, like Katrina and Jason did, focus it on what we can control in the class, or in the curriculum, or in the learning environment. Because obviously that message isn't getting pushed down exactly.
Can you read your sentence again, please?
Well, Steve had a different one, but promote greater student engagement in their academic growth through promoting the student's identification and development of their personal interests, through promoting the identification of their personal interests.
And what was yours?
The academic environment to promote the development of students' personal interests and
Would it be helpful if Claire wrote those as you're coming up? So it doesn't have to be the one. We can put a couple up there.
Okay, which one do you want to do?
So what was the one you were just saying, Kate?
Promote greater student engagement in their academic growth through promoting the identification, I'm writing too fast, reading too fast. Okay, I'm trying to make sense of it in my tiny brain. Through promoting the promote greater student engagement in academic growth through promoting the identification and development. This is probably identification and development of their personal interests. So I'm linking it, the personal interest, to their academic growth.
Promote greater student engagement.
In their academic
Just to
growth.
shorten it, maybe it's like promote greater student engagement and growth. I'm just trying to make it easier to unpack in your head. It's kind of a long sentence. Promote greater student engagement in academic growth through promoting the identification.
Okay.
What I had was the academic environment will engage students in personal pursuing their personal.
Yes, so that's why I was tagging it on.
I think the big thing there is engagement. That's what we're missing in our current thing. That's why it's relevant. We want our students to be engaged in their learning. Yeah.
That's the lot. Yeah. Okay. Through pursuing their personal interests.
So I personally
Supporting
don't.
their pursuit of it.
I think getting nitty gritty with the language maybe is not the best, but I think the engagement piece is the relevance piece for me.
Right.
That's why it's important to us, and I like adding that. to the goal somehow.
Yeah, so you can start to see some themes coming out, right? Where the relevance, the why we want to do this is because we want more highly engaged students in our school. And we think that engagement is going to show academic growth for our kids. When kids are engaged, they learn better, and likely we'll have some indicators that show that down the road.
And ours isn't much different, it's just that we didn't have engage in it, we just added a couple of words to the current one to keep it simple, and that is ensure the students identify, develop, and pursue their personal interests. And then we got into the how, involving freshman seminar and involving, other things. But I think the foundation of this is pretty good. Just some modest changes to it. But I love the engage and engagement. I think
Jason,
it's
you
good
had
verbiage.
something about pathways or something? You had just a pithy
I
sentence.
wrote down, Katrina did all that. She did a lot of note-taking. She just took what she wrote down and rewrote it into the sentence that it formed. And, but basically, so the one thing I'm not seeing on there is what we're going to do as a division, okay? The academic environment will engage, will it? We expect it to. Now, the school division shall provide relevant curriculum pathways for students to pursue studies related to their interests. But because academic environment, it doesn't, no, you don't have to write this down.
And the academic
It doesn't,
pathways was
it doesn't do anything for me, right? It's not a strong statement. I find it rather weak. Because we do provide an academic environment, we do that every day. So, the school division shall provide relevant curriculum pathways for students to pursue studies related to their interests.
I like that, except pathways has so many different shades of meaning in terms of the curriculum. And I think you mean more than that.
I think that's getting maybe to the measurable component. I mean, that becomes difficult.
Okay.
But maybe that's something we can.
And one thing that I'm
short and
thinking
sweet,
about,
I like
yeah,
it.
so let's see, promote greater student engagement in academic growth through promoting the identification and development of personal interests through curriculum pathways relevant to students.
This sentence would not pass an SAT.
The sentence would not, that's right, and that's okay right now, right?
We don't have to
So
take
we're
the
looking for big picture ideas.
Yeah.
We can wordsmith down the road. Nothing we do tonight is going to be set in stone.
So I would strike out through, yeah, right there in front of you, Claire. Personal interests, no, below, down.
Fourth line.
There's a
Fourth
few
line.
throughs.
For future curriculum pathways. So the example I had was, kid likes cars. Dr. Hairston likes cars. He does. Kid likes cars. Why do you like cars? Oh, he might have, it doesn't matter why he likes cars or she likes cars, just that the individual likes cars. Well, what can you do with cars? Well, somebody has to make a car. How do you make a car? Math, engineering, science, art, auto body, auto mechanics. All we've done is say, oh, what do you like? Now, we use that as the hook to engage them into studies that are relevant to that interest, and they have a deeper engagement in it.
Let's see, and I'm thinking about a little more simple. I'm thinking of the third grade. Okay? I like cars. Here, the rest of the class is going to read something, but this is the book you're going to read, and you're going to do a book report on it, and it's about cars. So that, when you start talking about pathways and so forth, you automatically start thinking about secondary. And I think it's maybe even more relevant. We talked about the third grade reading gap, when kids start to get turned off to reading partially because they're not reading about things that they're interested in. and they're being forced to read things they're not interested in, and it's meaningless to them.
Well, maybe that's something that you add to the goal. Students will identify some measurable identification of personal interest at all 3 tiers of our schools. Like, there's going to be an output for elementary, an output for middle, and
Yeah.
I mean, that would be
Right.
guidance. That,
So, yeah, like I said, it seems like we had an overarching statement, and then we'd say in elementary, it means this.
So how-
In middle, it means this. And
A thought jumps into my head is how do we engage students with their interests in a course of study? And I leave it very general like that because it's essentially what we're saying we want to do.
Right.
Well, one thing here too that I think we've got to understand is a lot of kids are going to change their mind. A lot of time.
We as a
And so
division have to change with them.
Be flexible,
Be flexible.
with them. And,
Have the
and
capacity to say, kid comes back, during the summer, he went somewhere, he saw something that was amazing, he likes dinosaurs. Now, that's his new course of study, right?
Yeah,
But
and understand that it's normal.
Is the science and technology and anatomy still the same, right, of courses of study? Well, that doesn't change. Now the new hook is, instead of the worm or the car on the hook, right, it's now dinosaurs. Or
I
it's
think,
animal.
I think that's where we have to trust staff to come up with ways. We just need to kind of provide the output that we want to see. And the output that I personally would want to, and even that, you guys have leeway to tell us. I mean, the output that I want to see, I guess, is, I only know freshman seminar. I mean, I'm not an expert. So freshman seminar, at the end of freshman seminar, which you're making every freshman do, they should have like a one-pager that lists the interests that they have and steps they want to take. In whatever way we get there, whether it's taking the ASVAB or they have to interview a professional, I mean, I don't know. Is that like what you guys are looking for in terms of guidance? Or I just think we're going to never come up with a solution on how to personally identify interests and create curriculums.
A different way to word it would be student interests would be embedded in every course or in every class.
I like that.
Well, I mean, that doesn't get to the.
How would we measure that?
I mean,
And it will. I mean, I think, again, we should be able to measure it through our surveys.
Okay.
And when we see that terrible survey data about students becoming disengaged, that tells us that we're not attaining that goal.
The one thing I don't like about that statement
Yep.
is it doesn't seem like the student's in the driver's seat anymore.
well, we are.
Because at the
But
end
we're
of
saying
the
what
day.
we can do to help
Yeah.
encourage the development. And the one,
No, go ahead.
the one thing that I'm concerned about when we're talking about in the courses or pathways, which I don't think you meant in terms of the curriculum pathways and state issues, is that doesn't take into account something like Center One and kids coming up with their own projects that are outside the curriculum. I mean, they can develop, what they want to learn in there, and it's within the learning universe that we want to promote, but it's not, strictly speaking, I mean, I guess it's in the broader.
That's where I would like us as a division to go towards, where
Right.
every student can be doing that every year,
Right.
so.
So I think we just don't want to hamper that with
Yeah.
our language.
So does it really, the theme I keep on hearing is choice. And so, is that, I don't know if that's too simplistic, but is it, how do you ensure that students have every year some element of choice
Right.
in what they learn? And that could look very different for a kindergartner than it does for
Pathways is
a
my
12th grader.
use of the word choice, so
Right,
you could
right,
strike
right, right.
pathways and put choice. Because that's,
Right.
I don't know why I didn't get choice.
We're getting there.
Student choice, student choice will be there in all academics.
Or maybe at all levels, at all levels of,
Their innovation and creativity is what we're talking about. How do we promote that?
Well,
Is-
for me, student choice is a huge priority. It has been for a long time. How do we embed that as a primary function of the school division? And that's if the rest of the board thought that that was valid to include that. Does student choice trump other things that we may say is more important?
It's interesting that you mentioned that because choice is an interesting word to use, and it does open up, I guess, some ways that maybe we haven't been making it a priority. When I also went to the 10th grade presentations, and one thing that all the students were echoing, although that's a small sample size, was how they can't really choose their electives because it's in order to get into college. And that was also echoed at our town hall thing, to get, they feel like they have to do so many APs, it takes up the time, they can't do their electives. The mom actually started crying because she was talking about her son loves band, like it's what makes him happy, and he was advised by the counselor to not take band, even though he was passionate about it, because it would be better for his college application if he had took some higher class. So anyway, that's stuff that we could, start making decisions around if we really say that choice.
Yeah. So in our May business meeting, we've got some ideas to pitch out to you that we've been bringing out to schools that address exactly those issues.
Yeah, so maybe, that's a good word to put in there if that's somewhere that we want to see focus. So anyway, I like that word, choice.
Me too.
So it seems like the keys that I'm hearing are engagement, choice, academic growth that are in there. Is there anything else?
Flexibility. Flexibility.
Pat, I would say we're not talking about academic growth, but we're talking about these things in core academics.
Yeah.
Okay, which is I think teachers are saying, well, I've got to teach the SOLs. I've got to teach it, so I can't give my students choice. And what we're saying is in our core academics, we want to be driven by student choice, student engagement, rather than other things.
And what's to what outcome? Like, what would we add on to this that says, so that our students blank? So we said we're going to have greater student engagement and academic growth and in choice and all these things, so that when they leave us, our students, or so that even while they're in our system, our students, because I think that really gets to the heart of the why.
Right. And the why is because when students have the choice and have the freedom and are engaged, they're going to thrive and succeed academically.
Yep. Engagement comes back to engagement, doesn't it?
The why is the engagement. Right.
And then when you thrive and succeed academically, then you've got no doors shut to you, right? When you walk out of high school.
And you're more likely.
Mm-hmm.
Learn on my own.
Yeah.
So I'm a self-directed, autonomous learner.
Yes.
Is that
So I'm,
The last part of the student-centered goals is to succeed as 21st century learners, workers, and citizens. So all three of those things would be important.
and if you're engaged all the way through high school, you might be incentivized to be a lifelong learner and really look.
A good citizen.
Right,
Yeah.
and a good citizen.
If you build
I
curiosity
like
in
the word
kids.
thrive
Yeah.
more than succeed.
Okay.
But that's
Okay.
Thrive works. Flourish. We're back to Pat's weight loss goals.
Well, again, thrive is contrary to the parents and the guidance counselors who tell you not to take band. We want you to succeed.
He
We don't want
loves
you to
band and
thrive.
he's taking AP physics and he's like, yikes.
And Tanya really was crying last night.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
was
she was
telling us
crying.
that story.
That was a parent or a student?
She's a parent of a high schooler.
So a concrete thing the school board can do is reduce the AP classes, which will
Stuff like
open up
that.
choices.
So I wonder if we're getting close to a draft that we might. I'm going to try to put it in here on our next slide that we might promote. Right here.
We do these and they're going to go to 2030 because this is hard.
Let's see.
But it's,
I think Matt did a good job in the budget of coming up with SMART goals. I
do
trust your
too.
SMART goal ability. So I bet you could, if we give you this, you could, come back with like three things.
Exactly. We will engage every student. Increase enrollment in center one.
Yeah.
ROTC. Equity specialist.
I mean, we
Too many
We have to
promotes and
stop.
have this
then
priority.
achieve greater.
And staff has acted on it.
Yeah.
I mean, the priority
They've
could
done a
have
better
had some
job
more
than we did.
strategies
Yeah.
tied to it.
But they're saving us from ourselves.
Just like trust.
I think one of the things we did when we did do a dress rehearsal on Friday, to get ready for the work session, and Patrick actually did have laid out where you were going to work on the priority and then take the proposals that we have in the funding request and then tie them back to the priorities. So I won't jump, we won't do that tonight because we all decided it was a little too ambitious, that this was the more important work. And so in between, when we come back to this before the retreat, that would be a good opportunity to think about, like when I look at even your draft right now, I think about the shifts that we want to do to our gifted program to more of a talent development program. I think about some of the other things that we put in those proposals, that those are strategies and those have measurements tied to them. So one of the things we struggled with when we were doing the funding request was with the 3 priorities, there were some proposals that we knew were good ideas, but we didn't necessarily have a priority to tie it to. So that's something else to think about when you think about priorities is do we need to enhance these or add an additional one that tie back to our proposals. But those proposals are little strategies that tie back to them.
I am impressed, Patrick.
So is this a start? So here's what.
That's exactly how I said it.
So we haven't got to measurable or attainable, but what I think heard come out of that draft was promote greater student engagement by ensuring authentic student choice throughout a student's school experience so that they thrive as 21st century learners and citizens.
I just think that academic coursework needs to be in there.
Where would you put it, Steve?
I mean, where you say all student school experience, maybe schools academics.
Throughout a student's academic experience instead of school experience?
That's good. And you might take out one of the 3 students.
Yeah, let's do that. How about just promote greater engagement, right?
Yeah.
By ensuring authentic choice.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
throughout a student's academic experience so
right.
that they thrive as 21st century learners and citizens.
Yeah.
So my only critique would be that we really lose the language of identifying and developing personal interests. So I don't know if we can somehow insert that back in, just so that we make sure that that is also a goal.
Identify and develop personal interests and thrive as 21st century citizens.
Yeah, right.
Good catch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
We think that's a part of writing, is having personal interest. You could have other things that's writing, but that's.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the question is, do we have specificity there?
See, it goes back to should our priorities be SMART goals, or should our priorities determine what our SMART goals are going to be? In other words, this is the vision, and then we should have underneath it, we're going to fix freshman, we're going to do something with freshman seminar. We're going to do something with 3rd grade reading.
So then let's think about that,
That's
Steve.
the
So
what,
let's,
and then the how.
so let's
not
start with
time
this, knowing that we can come back to it, and think about how would you know if in June 2020 we came back to the board, what would you want to see that said, wow, we really made some progress in this priority over the course of this school year? And that would be the next thing to think about in terms of how would we measure this and make sure that the measurements that we have are attainable. You know, we wouldn't say if our, I don't know off the top of my head what our student engagement percentages are, but let's say they were at 75%. You know, it's probably not realistic to say we're going to get to 100 by the end of the year. but it's probably, maybe it's realistic to say we're going to get to 80. Or maybe what you can do also is say, we want to see some movement on the student engagement criteria. You guys go back and you figure out what makes sense. You know, what do the stats say is a reasonable amount to move something like this within the course of a year. And so why don't you go back to thinking about what, if this is kind of the start of making our priorities smart, what are the things that you would want to see? You can use that packet of the budget initiatives that are there, and if you've got other pieces that you would want us to pull, say, and make sure we have some data when we get to the retreat in June, start thinking about those. Do you want to see our climate stats? Do you want to see achievement stats? You know, those things on the equity dashboard are important to us as well. So take some time. We're gonna back off again and let you all talk through this a little bit more.
It's neither measurable nor time bound.
Right. I mean, and the point is when
Implicitly,
we
it's time
can stay
being.
with this statement, but then we can say, and we're going to measure it by.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's.
I'm just simply pointing out what it.
Right.
It's a great
And again, I think one of the best ways to measure this is our survey data.
Yeah.
And so we should come up with a criteria for improvement on our student engagement.
And those surveys are at 3 different levels. So
Right.
elementary, middle, and high.
Right.
But to do that, we'd probably need one after you graduate also.
About time bound, he said beginning, we should aim for 620 June next year.
Because these
The
expire.
Right.
Right. In other
2020,
words,
we
we'd
have
like
to
see a change by next year in that data, and that data, I think, is given us the spring, isn't it? That survey.
Yeah, I think it's
But
coming
that's
out.
such gross data, though, but I guess that's what we have.
I mean, it's worthwhile, like, we want to be beating the national trend, national trend for climate data, because our data.
Well, that's better than 21st class.
Is it,
What did we
is it
used to
on
have?
par for nationals?
World class.
I was
school
just,
system.
maybe it was you who just said that it's on par with national, our climate data and how the students feel about our school experiences about.
I thought it was a little better.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little better, but I
But there's
I
a big
mentioned
drop.
But you could definitely come up with some kind of measurement, like
Engagement.
improve.
And I think it's high in second grade. It's
Yeah, and then it
crappy in
drops off in-
sophomore in
in
high
high
school. It's
school.
like
Right, and-
30%.
But if you can get 30 in a year going up to 40,
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
that
still,
would be,
yeah,
you
do it.
know, a pretty good
Right,
pretty good job.
and I think they're right when you say the staff could come up with some targets.
But if we
But
went
it has to be
past,
more than that.
if we went past June, then we could use like student surveys after they graduate, you know, to see whether or not some of those things have been attained.
I think that's something that's doable is the climate survey data. And maybe that is enough, because then it just gives motivation for them to.
Well, I mean, other metrics that would be, what is the level of demand for Center One enrollment?
Okay.
What is, now that we're providing transportation,
Yeah.
what is
What
the
the enrollment
interest?
increases.
Yeah, what are the enrollment increases?
And now that we-
Now that, you know, how are we doing it with attracting minority students to these different, I still would love to see the
That's
data.
under a different.
Well, no, it's
Do you think,
engaging every student.
do you think attendance is a measure too?
I was wondering that too. I was wondering that if,
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it depends,
So do you
depends on
measure
how
the
high
chronic
people are chronic.
attendance and
Chronic
set
attendance
goals?
could be,
Chronic
I mean, we know there's
absence,
chronic
yeah.
attendance, right?
And even maybe enrollment at K-Tech, whether or not more students start enrolling there.
The only problem with using enrollment, but maybe it wouldn't be an issue, is that that's technically not a predictor, because maybe there's just not a lot of kids, like, interested in those things. We want students to do whatever they want to do. It's not really like, oh, so we better have more kids at K-Tech, because maybe that's not.
Although at the same time, you got to get into the situation where you've got the counselors who are saying, you want to go to K-Tech.
Yeah, and I think that's, even though that's, I think technically we should have more kids at K-Tech. We don't have enough kids there. There's got to be more kids in that interested in it.
Should probably let go.
But again, we
Should probably let go.
you know, it goes back to.
It's pretty gross then.
If we develop a specific strategy for freshman seminar, okay, and you talked about coming out of freshman seminar, every student will have have developed their academic goals. And then we could measure whether that got done.
So how
Like
does,
Jason
so
said,
how,
that might
no,
change.
that, I like
Yeah.
that. How does,
that might
how does
change.
Avid,
Yeah, we have
because what
greater
you're essentially
flexibility.
saying is, that's kind of like what Avid does, right?
Right.
So how do they measure?
Right, and there'd be two measures you'd have to have. One is a measure that every student would do it. And the second measure is what was the quality.
Well,
Yeah,
part
but
of,
that's a
part of what we're
variable
trying
that
to,
is more than engagement. I mean,
Yeah, but I'm just, I go back to, you know, we set this vision, and how do we make it a little more specific? So like, I go back to third grade, where we lose so many students. Okay?
Which would mean where their interest
Starts to
starts
decline.
dropping.
Dropping. And so instead of just looking at all the elementary data, you know, if we were to set a SMART goal around third grade, and then we would only measure third graders, and we could, okay, so we get more accurate. We tried this with third grade and we got this result.
okay, and I want to go back, and I hear what you're saying, but I want to go back to the freshman seminar for a minute, because I think what we should look at for the, you know, the kids are looking for projects to do, because they do too much video watching, they do, you know, a lot of watching their phones, and to teach them how to set goals, you know, how to determine what your interests are, get them through that project to get their brains working on that, and have the consultation with the teacher, and then get, I know it's just a pass-fail, but there can be a check mark for, did she do this? You know, and did she do this to a decent level? I mean, that's stuff that they can work on. But, because we know they're going to change their minds, you know, a lot of the time, but then they know what they have to go through in terms of
They
the
have the
process.
skill, the basic skills to do it again.
Exactly.
This goes back to, you know, to what do we measure?
Right.
Okay, and when you have a broad priority that affects every person in the school division, you can't really easily measure that. You know, you need to measure more specific things.
In the budget we passed, there's the room for the data person, that position in there. And I think one of the things that we need to be ready for during the retreat is to give him or her what are half a dozen things we want to measure in this next year that are important to us. And then there could be a lot of other sub-things.
So we could almost say, you know, we want to measure student engagement. You know, we've got, you know, what's the data that we have that can measure that? Is there other things that we can gather that can also measure it and make it?
So if we get a half a dozen macros, and then we can do micros, you know, below them that can be of value. I think that's something we need to figure out at that meeting.
Just to go back to freshman, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say what Dr. Kastner always used to say is, what gets measured gets done. You know.
No, and I think you've been very.
What we choose to measure is going to affect what our teachers
And
do.
you've been very strong in that, Steve, and I think you're correct a lot of times on that. I don't disagree with that. You always bring it back, right? Because we've gone off in deep end in some of these discussions. And you brought us back saying we measure what matters.
And because what we measure will affect what people in the division do. And
So
we're trying to change behavior.
So how do we measure opportunity of choice?
I'm not sure.
Neither am I, but that's what, that truly, if for this to work, right, and our centers to work, and it all works together, that opportunity of choice is the critical piece.
well, I mean, some of the things, I'm not sure we can measure, part of it is removing the barriers, like removing the academic fees. I don't know if that's going to improve climate or not. I mean, but I think it may change the enrollment patterns in terms of providing bus transportation to all the different academies. I don't know if that's, I don't know, we're doing a whole bunch of different things, and I'm not sure it'll all filter down to the one, measure of engagement. But there's, I would like to see if the transportation changed. I mean, we had 40 students apply from not, I don't know if they applied or they actually went to academies that were not from their home school. I don't know if the composition of those students changed too.
Because diversity is something else we have to be concerned about.
Yep. And whether there's more girls going to Mesa, and it's all kinds of diversity. But
yeah, even diversity in that sense.
But I think those would be pretty simple data to put together.
Right. And the thing is, we've got remove barriers that perpetuate achievement gap. That's one of our priorities. And, a lot of things that we've done in that. And when we get to that priority, we need to put as much effort as we can put in this one.
I guess part of it is how much of it do we want to measure student level data versus the wider range of different policy innovations by the division and school level folks. So I don't know. I mean, because part of what is happening is more schools, more individual teachers, but also whole schools are taking culturally responsive teaching, which you would hope would better engage students, but I don't know if the student level data would reflect that.
And sometimes you don't even know what data we have.
Yeah.
Right? And so I certainly think it's fine and appropriate to say, well, we think we need a metric around equity in choice or something like that, and then we can go back and we can start. I can bring it to the strategic planning team and start to say, what do we have that might show this, and bring a draft.
Right. I think
board around.
I like
we
that.
already have a data person.
Yeah, so we
That's
mentioned
right.
that too.
That's exactly right.
So we were talking about that.
Yeah.
So that fits with our need, but
So if there's just big categories that you wanna see, then that could be something. Some of it could be just participation too. We've got we say we want to have 60 kids in the center. That's, that's a totally choice-based center. Well, how many do we have
Exactly.
next year to go there? How many did we have to turn? Did we have to turn any away?
How many people applied is probably more.
How many people sign up for ROTC or the junior
That's
cadet?
right.
Yeah.
And what is the demographic look like?
Exactly.
Is this just is it, if we put it up on the equity dashboard, would it align?
By the way, Pat, I know that Graham and I were asking you to really build this in such a way that we all got a chance to talk, and I know that you came up with the idea of doing it around this table. I don't know how you all feel about this, but I love this conversation, and just having the intimacy to talk and to brainstorm.
We've run out of gas.
It's good that you joined us.
Right, yeah. Hit the wall.
Well, then let's think about that.
That was in part why I
What,
was wrapping
what the
up.
25-mile wall? What is that wall at Boston Marathon? What mileage?
So,
There's a hill.
Yeah.
so one suggestion we made, if we don't want to get into the specifics, is are there some kind of broad categories of measures that you would want to put on the table that we can then go back, bring to the strategic planning team, bring to the strategic cabinet, and say, what makes sense around what kind of data we're collecting or need to start collecting that would do this. So
Some consensus that we want to gather student survey data.
The climate
And
survey,
we should
right.
see change show up in our climate survey. And how, in terms of how many kids are enjoying school versus how many are bored.
So there's a couple of things you want to look at specifically in the survey we get.
That's
Is there
right.
anything more you want to add to the survey?
I think
You
that's.
said choice.
That's-
Did you have choice?
And we say concentrating especially at third grade or looking at third grade.
I was I was saying, if we came up with strategies for specific grades, then we would only use the surveys from those grades to tell us whether that strategy worked.
And Debbie, one of the things that I've asked for from the board, and asked about to Chris, was for those climate surveys that are going out.
Yeah.
And they're just, I think some adjustments that were being made, so I don't know that we can give suggestions.
So we, not for this year's, but for next year's, we'll be, yeah.
How do you measure opportunity of choice?
How many programs you have that kids could select from?
How many times this year did you get to choose what you studied?
Did you get into courses?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we could put in, because it's our survey, right? It's not.
We can, that's why I asked the question, is there some kind of, we can work on the.
Right, and we wouldn't have any comparable data, but it would be good data to have.
We'd have comparison to ourselves and
Yeah, over years.
Trend
Yeah, trends. You could look at trends.
Well, you'll be here in spirit. Probably sitting out
So
there
I've
taking
heard
notes.
I might be in the minority here, but I would like to see what y'all can craft around freshman seminar and
Around choice?
identifying interests. So like some kind of concrete measurable that we can get, like every student will commit or, prepare a personal identification, or personal
Academic goals,
interest.
remember John was saying
How can
academic
we,
goals.
So you could, so one of the
encourage-
things that kids do in seminar, I believe, Debbie, at some point is maybe they even do it in middle school, is like a strengths finder assessment.
Yeah, so maybe that's off
Yeah.
base, maybe we're already doing
Yeah.
it. I guess I just have some questions around freshman seminar, and I know you were waiting for a
We're gonna
presentation.
have
We're gonna
a
have
work
a
session.
work session.
Yeah.
Freshman seminar update and the May work session.
Okay. It seems like a place we could put some goal in, because it's a space that we're taking from the kids.
We're committing an awful lot of kid resources to that program, and hopefully we're seeing the results that we want to see.
I mean, conceptually, I have to believe that freshmen who've had a year to think about their direction and their interests are going to do better than an eighth grader with their mother breathing down their back.
So,
saying,
yeah,
pick this academy.
If that's what we're doing, so yeah, what's the measure? So,
Right.
I'm sure there's some measurement there.
So we talked about academic goals, and really Avid jumps out at me every time we start talking about individual academic goals.
Well, if you think about the check and connect agent that we put in place for fifth grade,
Yeah.
they're thinking and they're thinking about it's goal setting. So goal setting may also be something around.
I would just like to see a list of all these kinds of things that we do to identify interests along the way.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know
and
this.
especially in freshman seminar.
Percentage of kids participating in extracurriculars, was that a measure that y'all had? Didn't y'all tell us that at some point? It's just one way we can compare ourselves, see if we're making progress.
Let's split that up into athletics and non-athletics.
Fine arts.
In arts, yes, definitely.
And did you have something in extracurricular that you wanted to do and it wasn't offered?
That's right.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
good.
Yep.
Yeah.
You couldn't find something you were
Yeah.
interested in.
That was one of the things that we saw, Matt and I saw at TJ, is that they've got that period that's set aside just for that. And they told us that there were new groups forming every month.
Well, that's one of the things we've got a scheduling piece that some of the high schools have purchased, and they're figuring out how kids can say, I want a pop-up club. I want to run this club, I want to have a club here, and they can enter it in.
Graham, who was the guy that ran against you that was here forever, who did the robotics club? He ran against it, what's his
It
first
wasn't
name?
robotics, it was drones.
Julia.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, Julia.
Julia,
Right.
Julia, yeah. He
Yeah,
created
so
a
is that
club.
sort of like independent studies too, right? Would
Right.
be in there. Well, I think this gives us a good jumping off point, right? So between now and in June, I can bring this back and say, we kind of landed on this as the specific and the relevant portions of the goal. We had some ideas that we threw out there around what would make it measurable for us. And why don't we see what we can come up with and bring it to the retreat? And what that time allows us to do as well is give potentially a current state. So climate surveys will be in before the June retreat, and we can say, so here's some specific questions pulled off the high school climate survey, and here's where we are right now. Where do you think we would be in a year?
And not just high school, but all
That's right. Yeah, that's just an example. So we bring.
That's in our goal now, so see, it's up there.
Yep. So we can bring in a lot of.
We're going to struggle through the other two priorities. We're going to have a 3-day retreat.
So we have two this year that are state generated. One from the State Department of Justice in our middle schools, and one from the DOE in our high schools. Our elementary school survey is one that we've generated, but they all look pretty similar to each other in the types of questions they ask. There's some, I can't remember the exact calendar, but there's some years that we have to give a state survey, and there's some years that we can give our own. But we try to make them similar enough that we can kind of look at data over time that comes through them. All right, so I think we did a lot of great work tonight around this. One question I have, so we've got the board retreat coming up on the 7th.
And it's 3 days long, right? Because we have two more.
That's right. We've got two more of these to go through. So that was one of the questions. Did this format work? Was this, would we want to do something similar to this, knowing that we kind of saw how long it took to get one? I do think this was one of the more straightforward ones. When you think about something like culture of high expectations, well, that's a little bit more broadly defined. So that may take a little bit longer to.
It's more concrete, but it's still pretty broad.
But in general, was this format something that worked for you all? Would you do something differently?
Was it helpful to you? Because it's hard as a group of 7 to wordsmith and come up with things. But if you feel like you can take what we did and craft something that reflects it, I guess my question is this helpful to you? Getting this like kind of dialogue between us.
The thing is, it needs to be an iterative process. Okay, in other words, he's going to come back and wordsmith it, but that doesn't mean that's the final words that we have to, tack it again. And when we came up with these 3 priorities, it took us 5 or 6 meetings before we got it to where I thought it was pretty clear and understandable.
Yeah, so I think what helps me is to hear the common themes. We certainly saw a common theme of engagement come out of everybody. And then having those conversations, I think, allowed us to all really kind of get into the metacognition. What do I mean when I say that? How am I thinking through that? And that helps figure out what our measures might be that are going to be meaningful to you. So I'd say yes. Doing something, having Claire record some things, and looking for those. What's similar about this? What's different about this? Which is another proven engagement strategy for kids. I think was very helpful to get us there.
So then how would the process work at the retreat if we want to speak to Steve's iterative process? So we would do this, and then y'all would come back.
So we'll have some measures built out around this. See if we need to, if we feel like we need to work.
I meant for the other 2, the new ones.
And then the other 2, I would suggest we kind of start from the same place. And now, what you might be able to do between now and June is think about what that means, right? So we've been through this process. So if I think about a culture of high expectations for all, how would I make that more specific and more relevant to the division? If I think about removing practices that perpetuate the achievement gap, how would I make that more specific and relevant? So if that kind of pre-thinking has been done a little bit, then I think we're ahead of the game by the time we sit down. Tonight we started cold and jumped right in, but still got it done. So I think the more we can think about that, maybe even come in with some, well, here's my version that makes it specific and relevant. That puts us a couple steps ahead of the game.
Well, it is perhaps backwards, but with, for example, the policies that you've identified, the new policies that you've identified, it might be useful, maybe cheating, but, to have the policies that are supposed to be following, removing barriers to the achievement gap, have those sort of in a grouping to look at. I mean, because, you know, the transportation or the removing of academic fees. And then we could be thinking about, does that get us as far as we really want to go, or we want to go further?
And
I mean, I
think-
know they're here
yeah.
already, but they're not
And I
specific.
think this can be helpful too, you know, so you can
Yeah,
look through this,
yeah.
and these are tied to the
Right.
strategic objectives,
Right.
but they can easily be tied to a strategic priority. High school center expansion.
Right.
I see a direct connection between kids identifying and developing
Mm-hmm.
personal interests with that. And what are the measures that we have in there? Well, some of it's around,
Right.
you know, how many kids we sign up for that. So if I see another one in here that's,
Maybe that would be worthwhile, is like a one-page document that has like bullet points, priorities, existing budget item, you know,
Yep.
boom, 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 just so that we can see already, here's the things we are doing. And
So we've got-
I know we have all that information, so
Yep.
it's really just condensing
and
it so
just
it's
putting it
easier.
down into one pager. Equity expansion, equity
Right.
specialist expansion.
Right.
So that's got a clear connection to number two. A lot of these you can see, well, I can see
You can
that's
see
high
that already,
expectations
right.
too. And I see that a goal for that is to, by October 31st, all teachers and teachers' assistants, newly hired in ACPS will have an introductory professional development in CRT. So there's
Right,
there's a
right.
concrete goal that can
Exactly.
say, you know, and we can put a number around that. That gave us 150 people by the end of this year who had that experience with us. So I can do that, Katrina, relatively easily, get that together and just say, here's our 20 budget initiatives.
And here's what they go under.
You know, a couple of quick metrics that are built around them, and get that to you so that you can be thinking about it before June. I think you're also going to hear some things next business session in May around some of the items you were talking about that may get the wheels turning too, around some proposals we have around student choice and that problem of not wanting to take band because it's gonna lower my GPA.
One other thing is regarding the retreat. There's a conflict in the morning, so we're starting at 1 o'clock or so. And one of the things that came up in a pre-agenda meeting, I think it was, do we want to stay through in the evening to have it be a full day in terms of, you know, maybe till 8 o'clock or 8:30, so that we can have this work and then the other things that we're looking at being done. Because we didn't come to a conclusion on that, correct? Yeah, so.
I'm fine with whatever. Although I will say, when I first heard retreat as a new board member, I'm like, oh, we get to do a retreat. we should rename it.
In the fire station conference room, which fire
Should really
station
call
do
it
we
an
have?
extended
Work
day.
session, yeah, an extended work session.
Right.
With donuts.
But yes, I am fine with whatever, that works for me.
If we start it,
Next year, we might seriously think about having a retreat.
well, the city does. They do an overnighter.
No, we shouldn't. It's not a good use of taxpayer funds.
I don't know, they probably go to Richmond. I mean, they don't go any place
I mean,
fun.
they're just using our money anyways.
Yeah, you're right.
I agree, I don't need a retreat, it was just a joke, I'm fine working.
So we can't start in the morning as usual.
It's the last day of school.
Ew, obviously we have a conflict.
Right. So if we start at 1 and go through till, let's say, 8:30, are we good with that conceptually?
If you do
It's sort
that,
of
we
flat.
need a real lunch break, or dinner break.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because if we go 8 hours straight, as an old man, I start to fade on.
Yeah, I don't feel the need to have a half-hour-long icebreaker either.
Well, we tried to cut that.
Let's
out
get
last
into the
year.
work.
John Gray's gonna be crushed.
John Gray, no.
Sorry, John Gray.
We kept him to 10 minutes last year.
We don't need an icebreaker, though.
Yeah, we did.
This group right now doesn't need an icebreaker. It's really-
I don't think we've really ever
ice is
needed
broken.
one.
Ice is,
Just get in there and just.
When you have,
ice.
when you have your January meeting with 2 new board members, an icebreaker.
All right, so thank you all for being willing to take a chance and participate in this.
John, I mean, retreat, I mean, I guess, do we need 8 hours? I mean,
can
another way
always
to
end
do
it
it,
early.
another way to do it is have something with Allison in the morning, which is totally not the retreat walk.
Could be.
Yeah.
That's
I
something to
mean,
consider.
I sort of flag at late. We're here late at night, I'm flagging. But we can do whatever you want. My cup.
Trying to stay with it.
But then they found it.
Okay.
This is her old phone. Still on strong as broken.
We are styling,
Lay it back down.
more or less. Ay, ay, ay.
Okay.
I'm going to be in Italy for 2 months. With,
Okay, just from a timing point of view, there is no public comment tonight. And so
Why wouldn't there be?
there is nobody signed up for
I
public
know, I know.
comment. Yeah.
Well, let's not say there is none. There's
Oh.
no one here to speak.
Okay. And nobody to speak.
Or is there?
Public comment. Ben?
Nobody signed up.
Oh,
I think he came in to speak. I don't know.
gotcha. Mr. Dornberg.
I'm here to, thanks, I live in Samuel Miller District. I thought that the Hate Free Schools people were going to be coming today, and I missed the memo that we weren't, so I'm here. So I wanted to bring up a topic that I've been wondering about for a little while, which is I heard last year about the controversy around sexual education and the videos that got shown in the classroom, and I haven't seen the videos, so they may very well have been really bad and really inappropriate. But I'm curious what the board's approach to sexual education is and what it is in the school system. I think it's like a really under talked about and underappreciated kind of education, and it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. But the fact is, like, students are having sex or are interested in sex, and whether or not they get a healthy, well-rounded understanding of, you know, how to pursue that is really important. And it's something that I think really often people don't get at home. Like, it's one of the things where, you know, so many people reach adulthood with really repressed or just misunderstandings that they have from family or from pornography or other sources. And I know it's like, you guys probably aren't looking for other hot button issues to get involved with. But I guess would just be encouraged to see that come back up at some point. Because I think it would be really easy to just leave that alone for the next 30 years, but I think it would be a real disservice to students who deserve to be educated on such an important part of their lives. And it does have health risks and socializing risks. I was reading today about there's like a movement called the incels, which is basically like angry young men who aren't able to get dates, and it often does turn into violence. And so I think, you know, there are both like individual risks and there's like public health and public safety risks when people just kind of are miseducated about such an important part of life. So just wanted to raise that. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next thing on our schedule is a break. But then we would come back for other business by board members or the superintendent, and then go into to closed meeting. I would suggest that we do other business by board members and superintendent, then take a break and go into closed meeting. Is that all right with everybody? Okay.
I'm not saying, I don't feel like I need a break.
Great, and so let's just move ahead. Dr. Haas, any other business?
Nope.
Okay.
No other business, sir.
Members of the board, is there any other business?
Yeah, could somebody send Mr. Dornberger what our...
Steve, turn your mic around.
Could somebody get in touch with him and with what our policy is on sexual education? Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure of procedure here. Should we go for a closed meeting now and then do the break and then keep going? Right. Okay.
Okay, I move that the Albemarle County Public School Board go into a closed meeting as authorized by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, Section 2-2, 3711A of the Code of Virginia, under subsection 1 for the discussion and consideration of the performance of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're in closed session.